I'm here today with Michael Leckie, who's the former Chief Learning Officer for Digital Transformation at GE. He also acted as the Chief Learning Officer and Global Head of Organizational Development for Bloomberg LP, and previously spent 12 years at Gartner Inc., where he most recently held the position of Managing Vice President, Programs Associates. He speaks internationally on the art and science of leadership, digital leadership, culture change, influencing and communication skills, and the changing role of the CXO leader in a socio-technical world. He's the author of The Heart of Transformation, Build the Human Capabilities that Change Organizations for Good. There it is. Look, did you see that quickly flashed up on screen if you're watching the video? Gorgeous. Welcome to the show, Michael. It's lovely to have you here.
It's lovely to be here. So nice to join you after all this time. We, for those of you who don't know, we met when I took your the proposal challenge, I think, so long ago, and then the proposal that I didn't know what to do with, and somebody actually then took and said, "I want to publish this." So two
Here
thumbs
you
up.
are. Fantastic. And what I also love is that you position the book behind you sort of slightly out of focus. There's a sort of subliminal book over the shoulder the whole time. I love that. Got the branding
kind of
spot
image
on.
there.
Yeah, I love it. So let's start with the idea behind the book. Which obviously, I have sort of a little bit of prior knowledge here. I know kind of where it came from. But for people who weren't working with you on that 10-day business book proposal challenge, where did the itch for the book come from?
Well, I've always wanted to write something I just didn't feel I could write, and I guess it came from the fact that I've been privileged enough to work with some really amazing clients and some great companies, and Gartner especially was able to expand my reach and the conferences we had and touch so many people. But yet, there's only so much you can do live as a human being, and so I felt like I had some ideas that I had struggled with for years and more years than I cared to say, and I thought, how can I actually share something beyond just with those I come in contact with? And so writing a book, as daunting as it was, seemed to be potentially one of the better ways to do that. So I thought it's time to go ahead and just suck it up, see what I can do.
And it's very much around digital transformation for humans, isn't it? And that sort of gap between, there's a wonderful phrase you use in the book about we're on 5th generation technologies, but 2nd generation kind of human interfaces. And that obviously is always the thing that stymies change efforts, is that, we have the technology, but the human piece is often missing. So there's an awful lot been written on change. How do you grapple with that? And how did you kind of get to the point where you were like, I'm really clear now on what I'm talking about in terms of the heart of transformation?
Yeah, it's funny. There's an old quote thing attributed to American football coach. It was at Notre Dame named Lou Holtz, and he said, "When all is said and done, there's a lot more said than done." And that's really sort of sums up what's been done with change, or so-called change management. How many times do you see the big consulting firms or someone come in and say, we'll do this and this and this and that, and then just manage the change, which sort of get a biscuit. It's like, it's that easy, but yet it's the thing they give completely short shrift to because nobody really knows how to do it. And that really frustrated me that we would tell people just, manage change. And we throw out words like, we need to be more collaborative, more engaged. We're working towards a more agile organization. And most people aren't sitting there saying, well, geez, that'd be useful because I'm totally obstinate, uncollaborative, completely disengaged, and I don't really care about anything. People don't see themselves that way. And so we throw out all these nice words and they already say, yeah, that's me. So what are you asking for? I don't get it. And the book as I wrote it and it evolved, as it finds itself as you start writing it, got down to the point that, look, if you want to change beliefs, you have to change behaviors first. Beliefs just don't change easily. You have to try some new behaviors on that actually cause you to see your own assumptions, your own beliefs, and then maybe question them. And then it's like, well, what behaviors? And the easiest behaviors, I think, to add into your life or to change are the questions you ask or asking new questions. So that's really what it kind of came down to for me, is that throughout the book, there's a series of questions that kind of fall into different areas of change capability, that if you ask those questions of yourself, of others in your team, and then really learn from that, not only what you found out in asking them, but from the process of doing the asking, what did it teach you about what you believe, how, what your assumptions are? Do you see them? Can you question them? That starts to actually drive change at the individual level, which is the key to organization change. I make a comment in the book, and I'll stop my soliloquy here, but I make a comment in the book that organizations don't exist. Now there's buildings and signs and T-shirts, but truly, other than the legal entity, an organization is just a group of people working together towards a purpose, no matter what size. And without the people, there is no organization. But yet we seem to want to overlook the individuals and their ability to change as we're trying to change an organization, which makes no sense. We treat it like a thing that just doesn't exist.
Mm. The point about questions, I thought it really resonated with me. And I know we were just talking in the green room about, Ed Shine is one of the people that's endorsed this book, the guy who wrote Humble Inquiry, which is fantastic. But I love that phrase you use about operationalizing curiosity. It struck me as, I was like, I wish you made that the title, actually. maybe book 2, Michael. But it's such a powerful, and you walk the talk in the book. There's a lot of questions in the book, and there's a lot of inviting the reader in to kind of co-create that process, which I think is really interesting. Were you aware of that? Was that something that you set out to do?
Yeah, it was, because the vast majority of the work I do for a living is just asking questions. And it's there's a great writer on executive coaching, Mary Beth O'Neill, and she has a book called Executive Coaching with Backbone and Heart. And she kind of defines backbone as having the courage to say the truth or state your convictions, and heart is staying engaged and even reaching out, when there's conflict, even if those questions cause the conflict. And so I have built an entire, career around asking good questions at the right time. And it's not that hard to do. It just takes your willingness to do it, and then, deal with the consequences. Because, a good question can cut to the heart of everything. We've all had that moment where somebody says, well, how about, or what about? And you're like, yeah, that one just laid me bare, didn't it? And that can be really uncomfortable, and we can run from it, and it can be something that we can step into and embrace. And so, yeah, the questions are so powerful. And yet we live in a world of answers and knowledge. People are all about, here's what I know, and let me tell you my solution and my answer, as opposed to asking a question and engaging. Answers, you're throwing them up on people. Questions, you're drawing people in. It's just such a different dynamic, and why it's so underutilized formally, and how our organizations work is always kind of amazing to me. Especially, and I'll write, one of the things I do when I teach these questions is there'll be a simple question, but then I have a tool you can actually download from my website for free. That's basically based on a lean canvas, which says, look, why might you ask this question? What could the value be? How do you ask the question? And it kind of takes you through this whole anatomy of a question. But that idea of how do you ask it, I love that, because I've been in those meetings where, you can use a question, okay, well, what do you think? That's a little different question from the statement of, okay, what do you think?
Yeah.
Which means shut up and don't say anything, because your opinion's not valuable, but I'm going to ask it like it's a question and make a judgment about you. So anyway, yeah, questions are amazing, and I love them.
And that point about questions and answers and the interplay between them in leadership, I think is really interesting, because historically you became a leader by having all the answers. And I think it is hard for people to give that up culturally, isn't it? And recognize that, actually, and use that great story about Clay Christensen in the group.
Yeah.
Suddenly, having the epiphany out loud that it's not so much about the skills; it's about the learning today.
Yeah, it is, and that's and the thing is that sometimes when you bring these concepts forward, people are like, well, what, I've been wrong all this time? It's like, no, you haven't. It was a perfectly good strategy until it no longer was. And what's changed is the world around us, right? The questions and the answers are more complex. The problems themselves we're facing are far less stable. It used to be that you could, look at the problem, get the best minds together, think it through, come up with a great solution, then just implement and scale that via an organization. And that drove business success. But by the time you go through that process now, just getting people together, having the conversation, making some decisions, looking at the budgeting, all that process, then you start to roll out your answer. Well, the question's changed. It's different. And so now you're not addressing the right problem anymore. And that's been driven by the pace of change and the speed of technology. changing what's possible. And so we have to make that switch into what's, kind of a brand new world. We're seeing that right now. A lot of people I'm talking to are seeing it with trying to hire people. There are tens of millions of people here in the United States that are looking for jobs, and tens of millions that are quitting jobs. And nobody can seem to figure out, well, what are they looking for? Because no one's asked that question. They're giving them the same answers as opposed to, what are you really looking for? But yet the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has brought people to a different place of what they're looking for in life. And as organizations, we can't figure out how to respond to that. What do you mean they don't want the same old crappy deal we've been offering them for 100 years? We have to do something different. That doesn't make any sense. But yet again, the world has changed, and so you have to start looking at it differently. And that's not your fault. You didn't make a mistake before. It's not that you're wrong. You're just no longer right, and that's a big difference.
That's a great way of putting it. I love that. Yeah. And let's talk about the writing as well, Michael. How did you get started? How did you find it? What surprised you about the process?
Well, I mean, you set me up here because it was so easy to write the proposal with the process, and then I didn't know what to do with it. I had this book proposal. I thought, well, what do I do with that?
Got to write it now.
That's right. Yeah. And so I called a friend of mine who'd been published several times, and he said, look, let me put you in touch with, the editor. I've used in the passage a new company code and page now. And he said, as I quote, and she won't want to publish your book or anything, but she'll give you some good advice. It's like, okay, I guess I can work with that. And so we got on the phone, the lovely Kathy Sweeney, and I said, what guidance do you have for me? She goes, my guidance for you is you should let me publish your book, which, completely surprised me. So then I was like, well, now I got to write a book. So
darn it.
Well, what surprised me, I actually write about this in the book, as you will have seen. What surprised me is how little time of my writing time I spent writing the book, and how much of it I spent agonizing over the writing of the book. And as I mentioned there, and this becomes kind of a lesson for other things in my life and work, is that it didn't become a process of writing a book. It became a series of starting to write. I just had to start to write. And if I had thought too much about it, did I have anything to say that was useful or important or valuable, I would just get hung up on that. Or what was the end product going to be? I couldn't see the end. I had to just start with the first step, which is, once upon a time, and start typing. And then things would start to come like they come in a conversation. When we're talking now, I can't plan out what my sentences are going to be to say to you. I just have to start talking and believe that I will kind of figure it out as I do that. So that's what I had to do with writing. And that was a wholly different experience for me. And also how I've been taught to write, which is to, think it all through and then fill it in. And it wasn't that way at all. It had to take shape and reform itself.
So interesting. It's because often the way I often teach people to write, as you know, is get a kind of MVP, get your table of contents as you think it's going to be, and then you do the writing and you just iterate, because you're then like, oh no, actually, of course, it needs to be this next, and
Yes.
that comes out as well. But I love that point about almost the meta writing. So much of writing looks so much like staring out of the window or talking to somebody on a phone or reading a book. There's an awful lot of stuff that isn't actually writing, that is covered by I am writing my book. Just as you almost had your meta questions before, didn't you? The questions about the questions. You can drive yourself mad with this, but I think and everything that brings your attention to, expands your awareness of the thing in front of you, counts, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, you helped me write a proposal that was compelling enough someone wanted to publish it, and I went back to it. Sometimes I looked at the chapter headings and I thought, that looks clever. I wonder what in the hell that means. I mean,
I wish I knew what I was thinking when I wrote that.
Yeah, it had been a year before, and I didn't know what it was. But it all did, eventually come. And I think one of the things that was most useful for me in the writing process is, early on, I was kind of obsessed with like researching and making sure that I was basically almost like aggregating thought together, but that it was all true and factual, not just some guy's opinion. And Kathy said to me once, she goes, people are going to read your book because they want to hear what you have to say. So, she goes, yeah, don't outright tell a bunch of lies. That's not what we're talking about. She goes, tell the truth, but your truth as you see it. You don't have to prove everything scientifically and make this, just a compendium of facts. Say what you want to say. And then I did that. And I also found that as I was doing that, that, for the most part, the thoughts that I had were actually based upon things that I had
Mm.
read and heard and researched. And I was able to pull that in to support it as well. But, one of the things that really made it a really fun process for me is because of that advice. I was kind of able to find, my voice. And when people
Mm.
read the book, they hear me in it, those who know me. Which Kathy had said, she goes, that's actually kind of hard for a first time writer. And, but it was her, kind of, guidance there, I think, that really helped me find a voice and be able just to speak what I had to say. And then, found out in the end that it was actually, relatively good, which was kind of a surprise to me.
And I think that's a lovely point about the balance of evidence and other people's thinking and the research that you do and your own voice. Because I think, particularly when you're a first time writer, there's a real temptation to sort of back everything up. Look, see, it's not just me that, and discovering that this is my book, and I don't even have to say I think that or in my opinion, because clearly I think this, and clearly this is my opinion because this is my book and I'm saying it. So really owning that and making your argument the narrative arc, if you like, that the evidence supports, rather than piling up all the evidence to create your narrative arc. It's a subtle difference, but when you've shifted, don't you?
Well, you do, and it's interesting when I started doing that, I guess, I realize it's what I do in my work. And if you look at kind of how the book starts, I start by telling you it's not the answer, right? And it's not. I mean, it's one part, it's one
Yeah.
portion, it's one aspect. And so I think that so many times we begin to feel that kind of what we know we figured out is right for everyone and everything, but it's not. It's something that maybe is right for us right then. And so as I, begin to write, I'd say, look, this is just, one person's opinion, but take it and decide what parts of it are useful and you're going to
Mm.
use. And that's the best thing to do with knowledge, right? Is not to say this is the new way. It's like, that's really interesting. What am I going to choose to do with that now? And that's how we pull together from different pieces to fit
Mm.
the framework and the fabric of our lives and what it is we're trying to do is we take those things. And so for me, I didn't want to write a book that was the truth. I just wanted to write something that was useful, that people would
Mm.
get some value out of and take away some main concepts that, the behaviors drive beliefs, not the other way around. Change, is an individual game played in groups that, can affect an entire, organization or country, things like that. I mean, if you can take away a few nuggets and then figure out how am I going to apply those in my day-to-day life, then you've got something that makes a contribution as
Yes.
opposed to just a vanity project, I guess.
That's a lovely way of putting it. And also actually takes the pressure off who's a writer, doesn't it? If you go into this thinking, this is going to be the last word on, this is going to be the ultimate truth on, it's pretty paralyzing. But if you're just like, here's some interesting stuff, take it or leave it, see how it works for you, see how it fits with your experience of life, then that's a much more humble, much more liberating way to write, I think.
Yeah, and it gives you an escape valve too. If you say, "Look, this may all be wrong," and later on, when something changes, it is wrong. You say, "Well, I told you."
It's not that I was wrong, I'm just no longer right.
That's right. That's right. There you go.
You, I think, used Scrivener, didn't you, to put the thing together? I'd love to just talk to you about that because I know a lot of people try Scrivener. I tried Scrivener and gave up on it because I just couldn't get over the technology hump. I'm actually using it again. I was like, come on, Alison, you can do this. But I don't find it as intuitive as I'd like. How about you?
I would agree. I used Scrivener because I think I read somewhere that was a great way to do it, and I think that I probably, like many of us do with the technology we engage with, I used a very small percentage of it.
Yeah.
It's not easy to learn, and so I think that and there's probably things I could have done to watch YouTube videos to learn Scrivener better, but I didn't because I kind of wanted to get to writing and not learn a piece of software. So it was all due respect to the Scrivener folks, there's a lot of tremendous stuff in there. I underutilized it, but it was nice to have it in there in its own special place, and that's all I did there. I was open that up, and I was kind of, I think, almost using Scrivener pulled me into a place of writing, because right now, if I look at my my desktops here, there's all sorts of stuff going on that can distract me. But if I opened up that software and focused on that, that's the only thing I was doing in there. So I think that was an unattended value from it. I would probably use it again and hopefully try and use it a little bit more intelligently and thoroughly. But I used it, then I exported into Word, because that's what was requested by the publisher when I sent them the document.
Yeah. I love that idea that actually the biggest benefit of this is psychological, because I'm now in book writing mode.
That's
I'm
right.
not, yeah, in Word I do so much stuff, but when I'm in Scrivener, this is what I'm doing. I love that. I agree. I think, I always get the impression with Scrivener that I'm kind of driving a Ferrari around the blocks of the supermarket. It's just so much more it should be doing. I have this image
Exactly.
of it sort of, just sinking its head into its hands at me. But one thing I do love about it is that you can set targets and you get a little kind of satisfying green light and ping when you pick your target for the day. I do love that.
Yeah, yeah, it's got a lot of those little things that's just really
Yeah,
great. Just have to learn to use them on that. Takes a little bit more time than I wanted to
yeah,
put in. Maybe most people will too.
yeah. Well, I'm slightly heartened to hear you say that, and I hadn't quite appreciated how the value of simply having it as the one place that you're writing your book. It's almost like having a physical space, isn't it, that you can go to, or a soundtrack, or just those things that tell your brain, this is what we're doing now, and we're going to focus. It's the deep
Right.
work prompt. Yeah. Now, I always ask guests, Michael, for a tip for a first time writer. So you've actually given us loads already, I know. But if I had to say to you, what's your one best tip for somebody who's just starting out on this journey? What would you say?
And I guess it has to do with that kind of finding your voice. Write what you want to write what you want to hear. I mean, know your audience, yeah, absolutely. But what is it you really have to say? Because when I'm saying something that I believe in and I'm passionate about, that's how I say it, with belief and with passion, and I get excited about it and I get lost in it. And I think I didn't think about the commercialization of this book or anything else. I just thought about, well, okay, if people want to hear what I have to say, what is it I have to say? And as I mentioned to you, Edgar Schein was so kind to take time to read it, and to respond and write me a beautiful endorsement for the back cover, and he sent me an email. And he's been a hero of mine for over 30 years, since I first learned from him in graduate school at Pepperdine MSOD. And he goes, I think this is a book that can have real impact. And I thought, that's it. I don't care who reads it now. It doesn't really matter. If nobody reads it but Ed, and Ed has said that, then I can die a happy man. And but I didn't set out to do that. I didn't set out to impress him. I didn't set out to impress anyone. I kind of got into it and just set out to write what it is that I really wanted to say. And fortunately, that seemed to resonate. So kind of a long way of saying that, but write what's in your heart, and let the rest kind of fall where it may.
Yeah, that's a great, great tip. Thank you. And I also, as you know, ask people to recommend a business book. So
Yes.
obviously yours. Yes, we know that. But which other business book would you recommend that people listening should read?
Yeah, I looked at that and I thought, oh my gosh, that was the hardest question in what you sent me, was which business book. I'm like, well, how much time do we have? How many hours? I've published all sorts of things in my bookshelf, but I was going to say, anything by Ed Schein, but I grabbed this one, and I'm not done. I just started reading it, the New Rules of Work, or Next Rules of Work, by my friend Gary Bowles, who I'm doing some work with. And why I recommend it is, it's acknowledging what we kind of talked about, that the world has changed and shifted around us, and there are some new rules of work and way we have to work with each other. And he's got a couple of things in there that just stood out to me the moment I read them. And the one was, he goes, I'll give you a hint of what the purpose of this is: a world with no human left behind, because we're leaving a lot behind. And this talks about that. And I think that that's incredibly important. He and I are doing some work right now that I really can't share in detail because it's confidential, but it has to do with being able to actually get organizations and corporations to not only give people a job, but give them a home in that case where they need it, and bring them into an organization in a much different way, and a different kind of social contract for how we operate together. And so yeah, the next Rules of Work by Gary Bowles is the next thing I'm reading, and loving it, loving working with Gary. So that's the one I wanted to recommend.
Fantastic. And of course, well, I hadn't heard of it, but I don't feel so bad now because it's clearly a new book. So it's one for the radar. Yeah,
Yeah,
brilliant.
brand
Thank
new,
you so
brand new.
much. And Michael, if people want to find out more about you, more about the book, more about the work that you do, where should they go?
Sure. So my website is simply michaelleckie.com, MICHAELLECKIE. That's where you can find me. LinkedIn, I'm at MJ Leckie, and I'm on all the the normals, Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. But michaelleckie.com is probably the best way. Join my mailing list. It is short. I think of it as small but mighty. I don't have a huge amount of stuff I churn out. I try and put out things that have value, free courses, free tools, information, short blog posts. And that's a great way to stay in touch. And I'm one of those just, itinerant, networkers. And I almost hate the word, but it's so important because my ecosystem is how I get things done and be able to work in huge companies as an independent, because the 3 or 4 people I draw in that I work with are, world class. And, but I love meeting people and getting connected. So michaelleckie.com and sign up for the newsletter is absolutely the best place. And yeah, please, read the book, and I'll make the pitch for if you read it and you like it, the one thing that is critically important to any author, maybe unfortunately, is write that quick review, honest review on Amazon.com. As people who don't know me say, why should I read this book? They see a few ratings there and they see a few intelligent thoughts from, you readers. That makes all the difference to them when I'm an unknown quantity in the sea of new thought that's out there.
Yeah, it's such a valuable point, isn't it? And if you do, I would honestly, if you read a book, if you love a book, don't just do that and enjoy it yourself. Write the review, because it's absolute gold in the attention economy, and particularly on Amazon. Reviews are what drive awareness and drive sales. So
Yeah.
it's a way of thanking the author, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is. It's something that until you've been an author, I mean, now when I'm asked to do them, I put the time in. It's this
Yeah,
time I don't have, and I put that time in because I know just how profoundly important it is, and how it's like, oh, well, yeah, but then I got to think about it. It's kind of inconvenient, but getting over that inconvenience can change other people's lives, and put them in touch with something that is what they need at that point in their life. And I'm hoping that for some people, I've heard from a few that this book is that for them.
yeah.
And this is not an ego trip, but if it can be them for those people, that thing for those people, there may be more of them. And the fact that I can't reach them because I don't have enough volume, and I haven't paid people to go out and cheat the system on Amazon or something to get the reviews up there, this kind of is heartbreaking. So yeah, if you love something, take a moment and write about it, write that review.
Yeah, brilliant. Good principle. Thank you. And of course, I will put your links up on the show notes at extraordinarybusinessbooks.com for anybody who isn't standing next to a pen and paper right now. But thank you. It was brilliant to talk to you, Michael. And I love hearing how those, glints in the eye that start off at the beginning of the 10-day business book proposal challenge emerge into fully formed, gorgeous books like this. Hold it up again.
Yep. Well, I want to hold up to say that, I mean, this wouldn't exist. That's why I think we got kind of re-kicked again recently, but this would not exist were it not for you and your wonderful program, which, I mean, just kind of opened everything up for me. So I feel a tremendous debt of gratitude for that. And for any of you, and I'm not doing it because she's asking me to, any of you out there that are thinking, even considering writing a book, I'm telling you, the proposal challenge is just, as we might say here in the States, pretty kick-ass. So go ahead and check it out.
I might use that as a new strapline. Thank you. Love it. Thank you so much for your time today, Michael. And I do hope that it is a huge success, as it really deserves to be.
Thank you.